All right, so our next review is going to be for Evil Dead Rise. Evil Dead Rise is the latest film in the Evil Dead franchise. This would be the fifth Evil Dead movie.
Not including the TV series.
Yes, not including the TV series. And it's kind of amazing to see kind of the Evil Dead franchise, which just started as like this small budget horror movie with a couple of friends goofing off, Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, and turned into this long-standing franchise that includes a TV show, video games, comic books. Ash, as a character played by Bruce Campbell, has become this iconic horror character. It's kind of wild to kind of see that. And Evil Dead 2 is one of my favorite, not only just horror movies, but one of my favorite movies of all time. I absolutely love Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
And mostly Evil Dead 2 is where people kind of get a lot. That's when Evil Dead, the franchise, a lot of the humor, a lot of the references.
Took off.
Yeah, that's where a lot of really took off. And that's whole story of like, basically Evil Dead 2 is a remake of the first Evil Dead. And it was kind of a funny story of how those rights kind of worked and everything like that.
The first Evil Dead has a whole host of issues why it's been difficult to kind of reference the very first one, because the owner, at least the rights issues with that first one has made it really difficult. So he's like, all right, screw it. I guess I gotta kind of reboot, but sequel it. And that kind of seems like a pattern that had to be precedented for it too, for the rest of the franchise as well. Some things are referenced, some things eventually can be referenced again, or they have to be clever with referencing it.
Yeah.
Because there is a continuity, it's just all over the place.
Yeah. And then in this new film, Evil Dead Rise, it seems like it's a reboot of it. And then like Evil Dead 2013, very much in the similar vein of that, how that was kind of, I guess, a reboot, remake type
sequel.
Yeah, type situation.
Reboot spinoff.
Yeah. So I guess it's in the similar vein of what they're doing with the 2013 version of Evil Dead, which I like 2013 Evil Dead myself. I know some people are maybe mixed about it or thought it maybe did a little too much fan service. But I very much, I did like that film, which came out, 10 years ago now. That's kind of crazy. That movie came out 10 years ago. But yeah, I kind of like this. So I'm glad that they didn't name this new Evil Dead, Evil Dead. So that kind of saves a little bit on the confusion of like which Evil Dead you're talking about. So I'm glad they didn't do that here like they did with Scream. Like they just called it Scream, the new one.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they didn't do that. But in this new premise, for the premise of this new one here, you have a family kind of living in this high-rise apartment, and they're being visited by their aunt, Aunt Beth. And basically, while they're in here, they get just like what happens with a lot of these Evil Dead movies, somebody finds the book, the Necronomicon, and they somehow, some way, end up reading from it. And that allows the Deadites to come and possess a person, causing all types of mayhem and destruction and chaos. Hey, hello, thank you, Rated M for Immaturity. Thank you for the raid, much appreciated. How was your stream? So it causes a bunch of chaos, as you always see. So one thing, like I said, you notice about this movie that is different from the other Evil Dead films is that it doesn't take place in a cabin. Which was always a staple of the Evil Dead franchise. Like I said, it takes place in a high-rise apartment. So I did like that different change of setting, even though this does actually open up with the traditional setting of a cabin. How did you like that change of pace there, of it being in an apartment instead of cabin?
I love that. I thought that was great, and it gives just as much of a claustrophobic figure, but in a different manner. It reminded me a lot of the I don't know if you've ever seen the franchise REC, REC, that franchise.
Yes. I think it
reminded me a lot of that, where you're kind of... Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think I saw the American version they did there, and I think it starred, did it star Jennifer Carpenter? From Dexter,
right?
Yeah, from Dexter. Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's like, so that reminded me a lot of it. I saw the American version, and I saw the original Spanish version and its sequel and the third one. So I've seen 3. I know there's 4, but I haven't watched the 4th one. I heard it's not too great. But I I thought the idea of just being in this high rise is a really claustrophobic figure, especially when you really can't. There's no reasonable way you can kind of get downstairs or get away from area. It's a different environment, and I thought that was a really smart choice at first. It's like, oh, we're gonna just do this Cabin in the Woods thing again, and then it cuts, bam, gets right to the action. Next thing, all right, we're on this high rise. You're like, okay, all right, neat premise. I even like how they kind of found the book in quotes. It's dumb how they found it because someone was being dumb, but I thought it was really interesting. So what about you overall?
Yeah, I mean the way they kind of find me, you always got to find some reason that the characters, like I said, find the book, find a reason for them to read from the book because that's how it works. You have to read, this incantation chapters of the books, and that summons the powers of the book and summons these these demons to where you are and possess you. Yeah, I mean you got to work. I mean you kind of have to, maybe even if it's a little bit clumsy, you kind of got to go through those steps in order for it to happen. Here, you have it where, it's this family unit, which I also really like here. Also, it's kind of another change of pace here, too. Because, again, different what we've seen normally, because before it's just like a group of friends there. Here, it's a family where you have a mother, a single mother who's with 3 kids. And I like how the family dynamic works, where the kids aren't annoying. I don't think they're annoying at all. I think they're very competent. I think they have good personalities. I really like the mother who's played by here, Anna Marie Thomas. And a lot of these actors I haven't really seen in. Oh no, I'm sorry, she's not the mother. Elisa Sutherland is the mother. She plays Ellie. I'm sorry, she's the mother, and she is very striking, by the way. Especially in this, she has red hair. And I was like, she could make a great Jean Grey. I was like, she was very, very striking. And
Older Jean Grey, probably, yeah.
yeah, I was like, she'd make it for a good Jean Grey. But yeah, so I like the mother seems really good. The kids, like I said, not very annoying, and I do like their chemistry together. When you have the character of Beth who comes in, who the actress who plays Beth, let me pull up her name real quick. Who she's
Lily Sullivan.
Oh, Chloe Sullivan. She's also
Lily Sullivan.
Oh, Lily Sullivan. She's also very good as well. And her kind of coming through where her occupation, she's a guitar technician. So she kind of has very Pacific career that she has. And she kind of is a person that goes around with all these different bands and travels with them. But it actually sounds like a cool gig, actually, you know what I mean? Being this, working for all these different bands and traveling the world with them actually sounds pretty good. But, her sister, who I think Ellie was supposed to be the older sister. I think she's supposed to be the older sister. And it's kind of like she's just like, oh, you're just a groupie. I mean, it kind of just reduces down to what she does is like, oh, you're just a groupie or whatever. So I liked when she kind of came. The dynamic between the 2 sisters I thought worked really well. And you have to, this is a very short movie too. It's only an hour and 37 minutes. So the amount of stuff they kind of put into here that's done character-wise in such a short amount of time before we get to because this is a horror movie, so you want to see all the blood, all the guts, all that type of stuff. You want to see that. I think is very good. What were some of your thoughts on that?
I thought, when you introduce the family dynamic, the whole situation changes. Your feeling on the situation changes. With your friends, you're like, I like you, and you're really good friends, but also, am I really going to do that dumb? When it's a family and you have blood relation, friends, brother, sister, even stepsisters, whatever, it's a family unit, that completely changes the dynamic and your panic and your worry on that situation. It completely changes that. So I found myself much more invested in that aspect of characters that I thought were introduced fairly well. I really liked the camera work and the cinematography in it, where there were a lot of good shots, a lot of good low movements that mimic Sam Raimi's style a lot, but kind of did their own thing at the same time. And I liked the character of Beth. I liked the characters of Ellie. It's just this like tired but like cared a lot about her kids, and the sibling dynamic made sense. There's the older brother, the younger sister, and then the youngest, and they all had like the dynamic that wasn't annoying, but kind of you understood where they were coming from. And it's also like the setting itself, even though they're in a high rise, it's like a junker high rise. Like they're being removed from that place because it's bad. Like the foundations aren't great, which is it in itself is a good setup for what's later to come.
Yeah.
So
They're in
I
the
thought that was overall a good setting.
yeah, they're in the high rise from Dread, basically. I mean, they're in that kind of high
Oh
rise.
yeah, no, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I kept reminding me like Wreck and Dread and that kind of stuff.
Rated M for immaturity said, I'm sorry, thank you for correcting me, rated M for immaturity. He said that they did do a kind of a family thing in 2013 one, not fully, but it did come
They
down to a
did.
sibling relationship in that one because it was brother and
It
sister.
did. You're right
Yeah,
with Mia and her brother. You're right. They did do that.
yeah,
That's what saved that a lot of that movie as well.
yeah. We're speaking of the 2013 one, we're actually planning on doing a big franchise review of Evil Dead. So all the movies,
Oh,
ranking them,
nice.
and then plus we're probably going to do the Ash versus the Evil Dead TV series because I actually haven't finished that one.
Nice.
So we're
Oh
gonna.
man, that's you should really do so. Did you hear that they're working on a fourth season?
Oh, really? Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So it's already in post production it's going to be animated. They're making the fourth season animated.
Oh, actually, that's funny you mentioned that. When I was in Rated M for Immaturity's chat and we were talking about Evil Dead, I was like, in the question of whether they'll do another season, I was like, they should just make it animated. And so I'm glad they're doing it animated because Bruce Campbell said himself, it's like, I mean, I'm getting too old for this. I'm getting too old to be covered in blood and
Yeah.
slipping around and doing all this other stuff. So I'm glad they're doing that. So yeah.
Yeah, they said Campbell said in 2022 July that they confirmed that an animated revival was in active development. So they're already in the works of making like the fourth or reviving Ash versus the Evil Dead, but in animation form. Which I'm like, perfect. That's the perfect way to continue this.
Yeah. Awesome.
Because he's still got a great voice. He still
Yeah.
can get it done. But yeah, no, it definitely he's like, oh man, I'm getting to the point where I can't do the physical stuff anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though that's a great joke in the TV series.
And speaking of kind of some of the physical stuff here, when we talk about some, like I
Oh
said,
man.
the blood and guts, there's a lot of blood, a lot of guts,
Yes, there is.
tons of that stuff. I mean, it's buckets and buckets of blood that you will see in this. Do you think that it's a little too excessive? Do you think they're trying too hard to be too gruesome, too gory? Because I mean, since like when you really look back at the other Evil Dead movies, really there wasn't really a whole lot of that there. Do you think it's overly excessive here?
You do you remember the first Evil Dead?
I mean, I feel like they not
You
like
remember?
this, not like in this, not like in Evil Dead Rise. You think so? You think it's
I
comparable?
mean, well, because when the first one, okay, maybe not to some certain extent, but in the first one, person stabs another person, twists a pencil in an ankle. They're clawing their body, revealing blood. He saw is like he goes to a vent that's filled with blood, opens up and covers him in blood. Later on, he beheads other characters and he's covered in it. They covered in blood. There was plenty of blood. The second one even went even further, the blood and guts, but also with the comedy. That's where the comedy, the black humor came in. Even when he's like cutting off his hand. The series has just been known for its overuse of blood and gore. Even the 2013 ratcheted that up even further.
That one has a lot
this one
to it.
feels like if we're gonna talk about like the blood and guts to a more serious tone rather than a little more campy, I guess Well, I would. This is more closer to the 2013, but because it feels closer to what they're trying to do with the 2013's spin-off continuation of just look the books. There's more than one Book of the Dead. There are multiple books. It makes sense there would be multiple versions of the book. Why not, right?
Right.
Like, why not different versions of the Necronomicon or with different names of Necro? That itself is an interesting concept. Yeah, it makes perfect sense for me that it's blood. I think that's what makes the Evil Dead franchise kind of stand out, is its use of weird body horror and use of blood. I think what really makes me kind of like ooh in a lot of this one is just the physical body, the right use of sound, and the way you're just seeing the body move around, and the way the Deadites just play with the people that they do. They enjoy causing torment to people, and they take their time with people, and they hardly rush anything until they're ready to pounce.
Yeah.
and that's what makes these movies interesting.
Yeah. The stunt work here by the people who are playing,
Hmm.
the possessed, do of such a very good job here. The way their body
Oh yeah.
moves, and everything like that. Especially when you see the one of the main people who is possessed. Hello, Tiger Woods Gaming. Hey, how you doing there, man? Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. When you see them, that they're when they're possessed, it's like the way they're moving their body. It's almost like this kind of marionette type figure, or like they're on
Hmm.
strings and everything, which is really really amazing kind of to watch. And the way they're crawling
Hmm.
or up walls or down things, or the way they're walking is very great to see. And there's also a scene in this, and I won't spoil it, but it reminded me of something like The Last of Us Part Two. And I'm just gonna bring up that video game, and then there's like a sewer scene in it, and that's all I'll say. You'll probably know what I'm
Oh
talking.
yeah.
There's something that kind of reminds me of that there, that just looks so terrifying, when you see it kind of crawling around, and that to me just looked really good. Yes, I mean, do you think? I mean, the stuff they do here with the Deadites. I mean, do you think it's kind of some of the best they've done in the series before?
Haven't seen a lot of it. Uh, my heart will always kind of be with Evil Dead 2, and I really enjoyed its over the topness. But I think the creepiness was done really well in this one. I don't know if it's maybe better than the 13, but there is more moments where I'm like, okay, they've learned this. This person learned a lot. The director of this one, I forget his name. He's an
Uh,
Irish
Lee
director,
Caron.
Yeah, Lee Crone. He also directed a smaller movie called The Hole in the Ground, which is not bad either, and has similar kind of cinematography. I would check that one out. That's also kind of creepy too.
Okay.
But this one just really ups the ratchet in its movements. I was in an audience full with people. It was actually not too packed, but not too much. Man, there were moments in the movie where I just heard people going like, "Oh shit," or like things where just things would happen in the background. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm starting to feel some tenseness. I'm an old school. I guess I've been watching horror movies for a long time. If you can make me go, oh boy, and like, okay, oh boy, this is happening, then you've done your job. There's a lot of moments where things are just happening in the background, even though I know it's coming. The movie knows know it's coming, and plays with that anticipation. And then that's a good use. A good director knows what its audience is expecting and still plays to it, but plays it just well enough that they can put a couple of curveballs in here. And there's some people that die or get possessed in this movie. I did not expect they were gonna have the balls to do that.
Mm,
If I'm gonna be honest, even
mm,
for an Evil Dead movie, I'm like, whoa, okay.
mm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and they do a lot of good stuff there with that. I mean, like I say, with the possessions that are really good. And the camera work here, you bring up that's
Hmm.
also very good too. Like there's a scene where they're looking out of the peephole, of the doorway, and the stuff they do with that. That's a great sequence too. I think, like that whole peephole sequence where they're looking through and seeing the kind of what's going on outside. I like a lot. Yeah, I mean, do you have any real big negatives with this movie?
Negatives. Um, I was there are a couple maybe some smaller things. I would have been interesting to see more of a little bit more of the Necronomicon, a little bit more of. I feel like once the thing's kind of been read, it's like, oh, we're just kind of done with it. Oh, and even though we try to learn a little bit more, it's like, oh, well, I guess we're just screwed. Uh, Usually in the other movies, you kind of learn a little bit something else in the context of it. Even with the 2013 one, you kind of learned a little bit more context with it. This one is just kind of like more of the same. You're kind of boned, but there's no real way out of it. In other movies, there are at least other means away from it, but with this one, it's not as much. That wasn't the focal point, so I was okay with that. But that is something that someone could easily bring up. I also think that maybe some of the cast of characters don't last or don't do as much as I was hoping they would do. But then again, in such a situation, you're like, I don't know what. A lot of my it's hard really to think of a lot of like really big negatives because I had a really good time with this movie, and it did a lot of things that I kind of missed a lot of good horror movies doing. It could it easily be a bit cliched in some of this stuff? Sure, but I do like what they did. I like the camera angles. I like the everybody who played the character played it fairly well. Are there some dumb moments and people doing some dumb stuff? Of course there is. It wouldn't be a horror movie if there wasn't. But I don't know, man. What about you? Was there anything that you were kind of negative about?
This is a small complaint. I mean, I think towards the
Yeah,
end,
please.
you again, I don't want to spoil anything, but I feel like it's like, hey, we got to do these things. It's like, when you're doing an Evil
Ah,
Dead movie, you got to do the checklist. This is what people, and I feel like they kind of do that here. It's like you didn't really need to do that. And I guess, I mean, you see it in the
mhm.
trailer. You see the chainsaw. Do you really
Oh
need
yeah.
do you really need to do the chainsaw? I don't really think so, but I mean, but that's just a staple of Evil Dead is having a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Same thing with like a shotgun, and there's even a line that one of the characters do that's a classic Evil Dead line. Some of that stuff
Mhm.
I feel like is like, I mean, I don't think you really need to do that. So I was like, that to me is a little bit negative there. How'd you like Beth as
Mhm.
the action heroine here?
Um. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was. Yeah, go ahead.
Uh I thought I thought she's a character that at first, I mean, right from the very beginning, you kind of get a, oh, okay, is this the character? Oh, I'll say this about the before I say anything about Beth. I'm really what really makes Evil Dead franchise interesting among the horror genre is that God dang, do they allow themselves to just pick the biggest losers you can for the franchise? Like in in first one, Ashley Lee Williams is his full name. He's this kind of nerdy guy who is his girlfriend. He's kind of like and then through the course of the losing all his friends, he just kind of has to step up and become this more badass guy over time. And even though he kind of becomes more of a goofball by Army of Darkness, that's a whole other conversation. He's still a badass by the end. He kind of has this transformation, and even in the remake with Mia and just being this like coming off as an addict and trying to get her clean, and she's just kind of like this is kind of this loser. It's kind of I'm very interesting. I think the making the main protagonist kind of these losers that just kind of have to figure out or kind of have the resolve that they didn't have in their regular life to kind of save themselves is a really interesting dynamic of the Evil Dead franchise. And I think Beth plays off that in a fairly realistic manner, especially her relationship with Ellie. It's genuinely wholesome. They try to make amends. Beth, you get the feel there's a lot of histrionics between these characters that isn't too explored, but doesn't really need to be. Like just from certain tones of the way they talk to each other, it's like, oh man, I screwed up. I don't know. Why didn't you tell me? It's like I did. I told you like twice, and you weren't in your own head because you were dealing with your own stuff, and it's that all comes to a head. So I think her just coming kind of by just desperation, just becoming this character, I think works. I think that's one of the smaller things. I think it works, but it could have been done better in some metrics. I think a little bit more establishing that she could do a few more things here and there would have gone a long way. But as it is, I thought they used her profession in the ways that they could, which was nice callbacks. And then just by the end, it's just pure desperation. Okay, I'm gonna get my hands on a weapon, and we're gonna do this.
Yeah. Rated Immaturity said, just based on the trailer, I was wondering if there was an
Mhm.
almost alien-style Ridley and Newt feel to the sister taking care of the niece. That's a good comparison.
Mhm.
Yeah, I kind of
Yeah.
see that. That's a very good comparison to the character of Beth, kind of, really stepping up, trying to do her best. Because I think another thing this movie does, I said, with the family, it makes you feel bad for them. I mean, like, what
Oh
they're
yeah.
going through, I mean, I really do feel, it's like, damn, I mean, you know what I mean? And that's on top of everything else you learn about this family. The dad is
Mhm.
not there. Like you said, they're going to get kicked out of their home pretty soon. So it's like then they got demons on their ass. It's like, damn. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like just like the worst year ever. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
just one thing after the other. So you really do feel bad for this family and what they're
I
going through.
even I feel bad for the neighbors as well. I actually kind of like the side characters and the neighbors, even though a lot of them don't get that explorer. That's probably one of my more major gripes. Is like, I would have liked to seen a little bit more dynamic with the side characters as well, but I understand what they're there for.
Yeah.
So you're just like, I get it.
Yeah.
Would have been nice. Would have been nice cherry on top if you added more characterization to them, but I get it. That's not what they're there for.
Do you think the movie should have been longer? 20 minutes?
No.
30 minutes? Okay.
No. I think you could have. There's some moments you could have like added just a bit more to, done a little editing or changing a little bit of the pacing here and there. But I think the length is perfect. I think it's for the most part. Maybe you could have shaved even a little bit more time, but I think for good tension for good tension, you need a consistent timeline and a systematic pacing. And I think this movie isn't that long. It's an hour and a half. That's the most you want from a horror movie. You really don't want to go beyond that 85 minutes to 90-minute mark.
Yeah.
So if some characterization has to be sacrificed, so be it. But there were other ways they could have introduced it and still kept it there. But for what they did, I thought if they absolutely had to, maybe 10 more minutes. But really, it's such a good, consistent pace. I wouldn't want to add more time.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Rated M for Immaturity said, funny comment, he said, they should set an Evil Dead movie at Comic-Con. You can definitely have a loser main character in that setting.
Oh, yeah, easy. Every single one of them.
Yeah, that'd be. Interesting because it's like, where are you gonna keep taking this Evil Dead franchise? Like I said, they moved from the cabin to an apartment. I don't know. Maybe that's a good idea of like setting it in a place
bigger
where
area.
Yeah, more like maybe a mall with other groups of characters, like strangers working together, maybe something like that.
I would love if a main character was because they've done everything around that, but with this movie specifically, I'm like, I would love it if they ever had because I know Sam Raimi would have a lot of fun with that, but I would love it to see if the main character was ever if they ever made a main character in an Evil Dead movie a priest or someone religious. That would be really interesting to see. How do they go against the Deadites? Because for the most part, religion can work sometimes, but not really. It takes a very specific knowledge. You kind of have to have an expertise in that understanding to even do anything against the Deadite. And for the most part, there's only a couple ways you can get rid of Deadites: complete utter dismemberment, or very specific use of tools. They don't really. Only really, it's a person's will can they somewhat remove the spirit, and only temporarily.
Yeah.
But I would love to see that. I could see Sam Raimi pulling that off and doing some really dark humor but kind of making a priest the main character, having to kind of becoming this badass. And they've really kind of play with it a little bit in the TV, occasionally on some stuff. But that would be interesting if you're going to take it that step and what they've introduced in this. I would love to see that.
Yeah, maybe a prequel, Evil Dead prequel.
Yeah, maybe even a prequel. Yeah, they set it up a position where they could happen. I don't know if you noticed it, but Bruce Campbell had a cameo in this movie, again, as Ash, technically.
I must have missed that.
Quote unquote. No, it's a blink and you miss it. It's one of the initial recordings. There's a person that he shouts, "It's called the Book of the Dead." It's called the Book of the Dead. For God's sakes. That was Bruce Campbell.
Ah, okay.
It's like blink and then miss it, little brief audio, and I was like, that's Bruce. I think that's barely Bruce Campbell. And the director said something along the lines. He's like, yeah, as far as I consider that's Ash. And I'm like, but this is 1923. How the hell? This time travel. Who cares? Sure. Why not? Ash has been everywhere.
Yeah.
For real. He's been everywhere throughout time. So whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So final rating.
I don't know. Do you want to go or should I?
I'll go real quick. So, forget my final thoughts and rating here. I enjoyed this. I really did. I think Evil Dead Rise more I think there's kind of less humor here than maybe in other Evil Dead movies, like in Evil Dead 2, and especially Army of Darkness. It's more trying to go more back to maybe the very first Evil Dead movie, or even I was watching a little bit of 2013 Evil Dead because I haven't watched it in a while, and that one wasn't as humorous, I don't think, as other Evil Dead movies. I think it was more trying to be
Yeah.
more of a straightforward horror movie. And this one is too a little bit, even though, like you said, like you had really great audience reactions. As did I in my theater. There were a lot of people like enjoying themselves, laughing at moments, certain moments where the characters are fighting off the Deadites. There's a lot of moments where characters are like that, and a lot of brutal moments too that people also were cringing at too and wincing at. So I think that was very good. Like I said, love the family dynamic here. That worked really well. They're able to do a lot in just a short period of time. Very good performances. Love the stunt work with a lot of things. Like I said, the Deadites moving around, the bodies, everything like that. That looked incredibly creepy. That was a lot of great work there. Like I said, buckets and buckets of blood. I mean, somebody came out of my theater and I heard them say, so much blood. You know what I mean? That's what that's what they said. And yeah, there is. And I think the way this is shot does very a great job at that. Different interesting scenes, and there's some good sequences in here that stand alone. That it's not like, oh, they're just doing the same thing as the other Evil Dead movies, which I think is very good. So it stands out there. I think the new setting works. It being in this high rise gives it a fresh environment for them to kind of to work in and do different things in. So yeah, for me, I would give this a good tune in, strong tune in. What about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's been a while. It's honestly been a while where I've seen kind of a horror movie that's had this kind of a budget, that's been this fun, a bit playful in its dark humor, but not completely like nihilistically mean spirited, but still it gets the scares and it understands what horror is. Horror is ultimately the corruption of the innocent and the breaking of a foundation and kind of twisting it and trying to do horror things with it. And a good horror is then trying to find a way to kind of either escape from that situation or kind of deal with it in whatever manner you can. And this movie does it. It does a great manner of having good characters, good acting overall, good cinematography, good, like, honestly, a lot of the good lighting, good place, and where it can happen in this high rise. Very nice choice, I think, for the change for the dynamic of the Evil Dead franchise as like the main staple movies as a whole, to get away from it, and allows a lot more for in the future. I mean, hell, you could do so much with this franchise now that it's been there's so much to go, and yeah, just like solid ambience for the soundtrack and just buckets and buckets of blood. Like, oh man, there's so many moments, even like where like something visceral will happen, you're like, oh, and they just pull it off. Even if sometimes you'd be like, oh, you just laugh because you can't take it at first. But no, I think, yeah, this is definitely a tune in. I would definitely tune this in, and that actually gives me credence to want to go back and see I haven't seen the 2013 one in a while, so it's actually given my interest to go back and watch that 2013 remake version. I've seen the rest of the Evil Dead stuff, but this one again has renewed my interest in it. Like, oh, that's good. Yeah, no, I'm glad. I'm glad to see it's keeping going, and that Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi, Ivan Raimi, and they're still spearheading ahead with the Evil Dead. They're gonna make Evil Dead a goddamn franchise, whether the movie industry wants it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So 2 good tune-ins for Evil Dead Rise.